Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Block. I'm Aga, this is Dominic, and we are thrilled to have you with us today. As we dive into the intersection of blockchain, energy, and innovation, of course, with our guests.
Professor Dr. Tim Weingartner, professor at the Lucerne University of Applied Science and Arts, and co-head of the Information Systems Research Labs. Joining him is Hongyang Sun, a research associate at SHLU and a PhD student in the cryptography and data security group. Tim and Sun collaborated on DADFIR 3 project, a data-driven financial risk and regulatory reporting framework, as well as on the GRID project I have just mentioned.
So let's start with a big picture question. So there is often discussion about blockchain and energy, but isn't it really about the decentralization? Isn't the decentralization the game changer? What's your point of view on that?
Well, I think I really like the concept of decentralization, and I'm very excited to see that it has been evolving over time. I mean, like when people hear the word decentralization, they most probably think of blockchain immediately. But the concept of decentralization already existed long before the inception of blockchain, let's see. For example, the internet itself is decentralized, and everyone can contribute some information on it. And also Google's early, distributed storage used this very idea of spreading data across many machines instead of relying on a single, central point, so that different machines can share the burden of dealing with tons of tasks. But the blockchain did strengthen the idea of decentralization to the next level. Traditional distributed system mostly work inside a few organizations internally and were designed just to share workload or improve reliability. Well, blockchain goes a step further. It allows many different participants in different size to coordinate together in a sort of real-world environment efficiently, where participants can be malicious, they can be interest-driven, can be either friendly or indifferent, and can be more like real humans instead of machines. To me, I think that's the biggest contribution of blockchain. It turns the decentralization from a technical concept into a practical model, for efficient collaboration and mutual regulation. And in the energy sector, this becomes highly relevant. The energy transition is unstoppable and happening because of different factors. Now we can see that households install solar panels on their rooftops almost everywhere. So electric vehicles are also widely used in daily life. And moreover, governments are exploring wind and tidal generation to achieve sustainable development. But unlike traditional fossil fuel power plants, these clean energy resources are naturally scattered and controlled by different people. So after we have this beautiful vision of where we should go in the future, the key question becomes how do we make this distributed energy resource work together efficiently in an open and trustless and big community. And naturally, as we can see, decentralization provides a hopeful way to coordinate them so that our everyday life can remain reliable while moving towards a cleaner energy future.
Definitely. That sounds like a plan. I'm always saying that, you can actually get all the features of blockchain with multiple other technology. But actually in blockchain, it's out of the box and it's working. Yeah? But I totally agree that it was there previously. And what do you think, Tim? What is a good example of actually applying this decentralization in energy sector?
In the energy sector, there are multiple parts where we can apply blockchain. I think one aspect that always has been looked into is peer-to-peer trading. I think that's the first and obvious way because blockchain comes from the financial industry. And when it comes to decentralized trading, it has been looked into a lot of use cases. We still have this kind of two views on it. On the one hand side, yes, in a decentralized system, blockchain makes sense. On the other hand, we still in the energy sector have trusted third parties that more or less control everything. So there's always the question, do we need a blockchain in this case? But I think with a more decentralized future, blockchain really makes sense there.
And actually, you've done some research on grid stability.
What was the most important or most interesting outcome of this project that you did?
Our paper has been published about to use blockchain to enhance grid stability. And the reason why we started this research is from a talk between Tim and me, where we found that most pilot projects are still in the stage of pilots many years after they appeared, and we found that the very reason is that they lack stability. Well, in mathematics, people always give everything a definition. So here I also want to give a definition to the power grid stability. Well, so to keep power grid stable is to keep frequency and also voltage and also some power flows within the safe operating range. And we can see why this is so important for our daily life from two aspects. Well, the first reason is that the power grid has to keep supply and demand in balance in real time, because the total demand of a power grid can change constantly. For example, let's say in summer, currently even in Switzerland, people need air conditioners because of the climate change. And at some peak hours, the balance can be lost, which can lead to widespread outages. So the second reason is that the voltage needs to stay within a safe range, otherwise device and electric wire can get damaged. And parts of the grid may also shut down. So grid stability essentially is the very core requirement for any software infrastructure built for power grid. And now with more and more as a distributed energy resource added in the power grid, it is more challenging to keep a power grid stable because the production of clean energy is uncontrollable. For example, now if we have a centralized power plant fueled by coals, and assume I was a monitor, if I found the energy is not enough, I can just use more coals, and vice versa. But if I find the energy is, but in a power grid, like driven mainly by those distributed resources, I cannot see something to a household like, oh, our voltage is increasing all the time. Just please remove some of your solar panels for a couple of days or for several hours. Yeah, that's unrealistic.
Congratulations on the paper being accepted. Do you plan to somehow extend or continue that further?
The paper now really highlights our concepts and first example, which are like more in a lab environment. So I think the next step, what we want to approach, since we are University of Applied Science, is really to get this out and also in a test bed to also test our concept. So there we are in contact with a couple of electric companies or power grid maintainers. And another topic which is coming up, so-called DePIN or decentralized physical infrastructure, something that we also want to include into our concepts.
Can you elaborate more about the PIN?
The concept of DePIN, and it's pretty new, but that you have not control about the whole physical infrastructure, but that you bring in components from other people, from like households, like photovoltaic panels or batteries and so on, and you like give them either the control over this and with incentives to put this into the grid, or that those people give you as the grid operator the control over their, for example, batteries or devices, but as an incentive they got paid by, for example, blockchain tokens.
So this is a kind of step to build a fully decentralized energy market.
And also another direction is that we are still improving our architecture through updating some consensus of blockchain, which is also my PhD topic. So I just want to add it here.
So you think that we are still to work more on consensuses to be able to actually handle the energy sector by the blockchain technology? Did I get it right?
Yeah, because like the performance of blockchain is still a bottleneck to, let's say, use blockchain to achieve almost every infrastructure.
One question, Timmy, you mentioned that there are some lab results or some lab ideas that you mentioned that you would like to put in use, at least in some form. So could you give us a glimpse of what kind of changes, structure, what kind of application you are working on?
Yeah, so in the paper, and Sun can also describe more about the results here. We just looked into how can we get this grid stability by improving the incentive mechanisms, and also by introducing blockchain, but not only blockchain, a combination also with AI agents in this field. And so far we just tested this with free available grid data. We had a simulation running with multiple households over a certain time or time frame. We are now in contact with a lot of energy providers that we can get additional data to verify this. And then the next step would be also to more or less bring it in the field and try this infrastructure in a more lab setting, but closer to real life, as say.
Wow, that's impressive. Sun, anything else you want to add? That sounds great.
Actually, we're testing our prototype before we want to deploy our architecture at scale. And the most surprising results we got is that we find our architecture can achieve up to 30% peak shaving rate only through a blockchain-based lightweight distributed control without introducing other side systems. Because generally, if you want to make the electricity or power grid stable, you need some specialized side system to do this. But we just use blockchain incentivized mechanism to achieve this, so we can reduce the communication consumption. And besides, we achieve a demand and supply balance with deviation within 1 to 5% in microgrid. So I think that's a very nice data, and this also give us some encouragement to deploy this scale.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely what multiple distributors and generally energy sector looks for. So let's talk a little bit more of use cases. You mentioned sustainability and peer-to-peer networks and other interesting application for blockchain in the energy sector that you've heard of or you want also to elaborate on?
This is one aspect we want to focus on. Another aspect we look into is completely different is the whole carbon tokenization market. So we were in contact with a couple of companies that either already look into this topic or would be interested in carbon tokenization. I think there we still face some issues because at the moment there are some centralized solutions which more or less work for single countries. I think in a decentralized way over several countries that's getting more and more tricky. Here, my honest view is that it's less a problem of technology, but more a problem of governance and multiple and different interests. So we look into this. Also want to share what could be possible. But I think it's in this case, it's a long way to go.
Yeah, because energy sector usually is monitored by the government, handled by the government, and I understand that decentralization on that level, that's another challenge in itself. Even if we have perfect blockchain, perfect infrastructure, there are still some administrative challenges to be handled, definitely.
When we look into blockchain and energy, and if we discuss with industry or with people who are not in the blockchain business, it's always the question about like energy consumption of blockchain. Because if people hear blockchain, then they think about, okay, Bitcoin and mining process and consuming a lot of energy. And that's really something you have to educate, that there are different consensus algorithms. And that's also where Sun's PhD comes in to show that with new consensus mechanisms, you can also improve this, on the one hand side, the speed, but also the whole energy consumption, so that blockchain is not like a system that mainly consumes energy.
Yeah, that's true. And I believe, Sun, you get that a lot, that people are thinking about everything that we hear about mining Bitcoin when you are talking about consensus and blockchain. Isn't it true?
Bitcoin used the consensus POW. It is just only one kind of consensus. Now we have proof of stake and also other, let's say, Byzantine tolerant consensus, and all of them are based on stake or vote, which will not cause any, energy cost or everything else. So they are eco-friendly.
Yeah, and we started with grid stability. I believe there was already one pilot project from IBM somewhere in Netherlands, when they actually, what they wanted to do is to make a market more competitive, because I think that's another benefit of actually decentralization. So the idea was that users could freely, prosumers and consumers could freely change the energy provider. So whoever you sell to or whoever you buy from the energy. And because of that, for example, there might be some incentives, just like you mentioned before. There is the grid is close to overload. So actually I will get paid some tokens or some money when I turn off my air conditioning. Yeah. So I can, let's say, be less comfortable, but gain something else. Or for example, some providers can provide me additional discounts if I, let's say, charge my car during the night. Yeah. So that's another benefit that I see. And some pilots have been done there, but I think your research is actually another step in this incredible journey. Do you think that decentralization will also help multiple providers, or actually help market to be more competitive?
Because also one novelty of our paper is we want to use blockchain to achieve self-regulation, which means if I have some consumption, I want to control my real consumption within this predicted consumption value. So that's achieved by incentivized mechanism. So in this case, people are more and more likely to do this because they can have some real, real reward.
And previously, let's now move to more provocative question. Like, there is this discussion, who's going to win, blockchain or AI? Because when we are talking about innovation, they are often mentioned together. So what do you think?
It's not blockchain or AI. I think it's a combination of it. Yes, of course, at the moment, everybody is speaking about AI, and blockchain is like a little bit off the hype cycle. And when we speak about AI, everybody's thinking about large language models like ChatGPT or Gemini, but not like other applications of AI. So I think there is this combination of blockchain and AI, because, or the advantage, and also we looked into this in our paper, is that if you want to decentralize and if you want to give some duties to the customers, so that they can manage something, the customers don't have time or interest in like being there and managing this. But here can come in AI, where you have some AI agents that on your behalf act, or on your behalf control certain aspects. And another aspect we looked into with another paper is when it comes for AI agents to interact with blockchain. So there is this model context protocol, MCP, where you can, like an AI agent can interact with outside systems, and one of those systems could be a blockchain. So also to give AI agents the possibility to perform, for example, financial transactions or to interact directly with smart contracts.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a next level of innovation. And San, what do you think about this? AI or blockchain, or maybe both?
Well, I agree with Tim. I think they are complementary to each other, and also blockchain can somehow enhance AI. Well, I would like to introduce another work with Tim, and we are working on. Well, the very basic idea is that we want to build a decentralized machine learning platform where different parties can train a model together by contributing their limited computation power and data size. Because we are sort of, let's say, in a rush to building vastly intelligent AI, and for achieving this, we need to spend a lot of computation power. It is also very pricey, and also some very high quality large data sites. And also for some scenarios like hospital, they cannot share their, data with others out of privacy protection. So we want to overcome these challenges. So we are building this decentralized machine learning platform now. We have built a prototype for test training a small CV AI model used in medical area and finding the collaborative training effect by splitting a whole data set into several portions is almost the same as training this model with a complete data set. So I think decentralization is a great tool to build strong AI since people's ability is very limited after all for single points.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that it's not a clash, it's a collaboration. However, if we think about getting back to the energy market, if you think about energy market, which is complicated by itself, you add complicated blockchain on top of that, and you add complicated AI because the technology is huge on that. I have a headache. Do you think there was really a chance for pretty good collaboration there?
Perhaps we also have to look into the future. And yeah, we are researchers, so we think about the futures and also possibilities. I can completely understand that at the moment you don't want to apply everything to the existing grid and then hope that everything goes right. And also I think that AI, on the other hand, also reduces some of the complexity you have today in blockchain, like when you look into usability and those aspects. So I'm confident for the future, but I can completely understand that I don't want to apply everything we could possibly think of now to a very relevant infrastructure and critical infrastructure like the energy sector.
Well, I can only support what Tim and San said. So I think that we will not exchange blockchain and AI or otherwise. So those technologies will match and intersect to have businesses, and we are focusing on energy and sustainability. So in Espeo software, we built a proof of concept system to classify ESG indicators, validate IoT data, and ensure results on a secure ledger, ensuring that transparency and trustworthiness are there to provide the investment reporting. So the AI was used in that project to handle various data structures and formats, like units, finding the right information, and making sure all units are aligned. So here, in this project, we showcased a great combination of AI and blockchain. But coming to the future of energy sector, so what do you guys think? What will be the next big thing in the energy sector?
Yes, we highlighted a little bit already. I think at the moment this concept of DePIN or decentralized physical infrastructure is one aspect that will more or less come. Also incentivizing people to contribute to the system and to also contribute with not only like computing power, but also with devices. And I also think the future of the energy sector, as we already highlighted, will become more and more complex. So it will get harder for the players in the energy sector to control everything. But at the moment, yes, they do. And I hope that at some point they realize that decentralization and giving up the control a little bit to others with working incentive mechanisms makes more sense than trying to get everything under control.
Yes, and in your PhD thesis, you research various consensus mechanisms. So, which consensus protocol you think will be the most suitable for the energy sector? The one that you that is eco-friendly, or maybe some other?
I think it must be some eco-friendly consensus, but now there are a lot of different types of consensus, and they have their own advantages and also disadvantages. When it comes to if we want to use a consensus in the energy sector, we need to consider about scalability, performance, and a lot of factors. So, well, I think the consensus with very good scalability and also very good performance will be the final choice of the one if we want to use it in the energy sector and also other IoT-based IC systems.
Yeah, definitely. When I'm thinking about this next best thing, I think it will be generally peer-to-peer energy distribution. Of course, again, I don't think we will quickly get to the point when I can easily sell the energy to my neighbor and get the energy from them without any intermediaries because of all the administration let's call it organizational challenges that we have because it's energy and it's crucial. But even if we say that there will be still a central distribution, but actually if I could just buy energy from them, even with the intermediary, and it will formally be still from my distributor. First of all, I am a part of a community. I know that this energy is actually eco-friendly and it's sustainable. And last but not least, if we think about distribution losses, yes, then, the energy the way that the energy needs to come through, it's definitely smaller. So I think it's a win for everyone. Do you see it as a next step, or maybe I'm just dreaming here?
I really see it the same way. So having incentives to also build like solar panels, because today, if you think about, should I install solar panels because, as you mentioned, I only have a certain geographic direction, or I cannot use the whole energy myself, then you really think twice and you do the calculation. At some point, it doesn't really make sense. But if you can share this with others that have other needs, then in a sum, you get you get an added value for everybody. And coming back to what you mentioned, yes, there will always be grid operators. There will always be some people or some companies that have to install the grid. And perhaps also their business model will change, so that you say, okay, I offer this service of having this grid, and there is a surcharge that people have to pay on this, but it's not that I'm the only one who provides energy.
Well, the researchers and the business agree, so I think we are good to go. But let's talk more about your research, but let's skip from the energy into the finance. Actually, I know that you two collaborated also on some financial research, and we do a lot of fintech projects. So I wanted to move a little bit from the energy to yet another project. So can you tell us more about the DAT3 project that also Dominic mentioned in the introduction? What was it about? What are the results?
Perhaps have to highlight a little bit my background. I worked 15 years in the financial industry in Switzerland. And this project, which is now in a later stage, and we collaborate with two other universities, the Zurich University of Applied Science and the University of Zurich. So the idea of this project, which not only focuses on blockchain or all the decentralized aspects, but also the traditional finance, is to look into data-driven financial reporting. So that's the background. How can we support financial authorities, also national banks and so on, and also the whole financial systems with algorithms to calculate financial risks and also to reduce the risks of or systemical risks in this whole system. Our part here was the decentralized part, so we looked into, or still look into, decentralized finance and how risks and reporting could be handled here. Like, how can we calculate risks? How can we also standardize a little bit the protocols? Because what we see in DeFi at the moment is that there are a lot of different protocols out there. Everybody's coming up with new fancy financial constructs, but it's really hard to understand them. And also with this, to understand the risks. So in the whole project, we apply the Actus framework, which is like a standardization of calculations for cash flows of financial contracts. And our part is really to apply this to decentralized finance.
Okay, so actually it's about, a bit of reporting from the centralized finance. That sounds like quite a challenge. So did you manage to anyhow find a way to do it? What's the outcome? Is it even possible?
There are multiple aspects here. Also, the partners look into multiple aspects. I think, yes, when we look into DeFi, there is no regulatory reporting yet. I think it will come at some point. It's still in discussion in a lot of countries. We have first legal frameworks like MiCA and so on, but that's really country specific. At the moment, what I see when we look into what's happening in the financial industry, stablecoins are the big thing. From a blockchain technological perspective, that's not real rocket science. It's just a token that is somehow, and there are different ways, linked to fiat currencies. But I think stablecoins could also give a chance to link this to other financial contracts implemented as smart contracts. And at the moment, we have a system like developing where we link like financial or stable coins with off-chain Actus calculations, so that we can implement more from a traditional perspective inspired contracts on a smart contract. So we have the execution security, but on the other hand, to outsource a little bit the whole calculation because blockchain is not the right place to do complex calculations.
Okay, yeah, that's impressive, and I think it's a good way to that's another step in adoption. Yeah, when the traditional finance, traditional reporting might at least get a glimpse of this very robust defined ecosystem. Yeah, and what do you think, San, would actually stable coins and DeFi reshape the financial world as we know it?
Well, I will pass my mic to Tim because he has been in this area for many years and I just jump in here, so he must have more insights of this.
We will see a lot development in this space. As highlighted at the moment, I see the highest risk in this whole complexity of those new systems. We will also see a lot of, hopefully not that big, but there will be some crisis. There will be some, let's not speak about fraud, but more misunderstanding of how products work. in a decentralized system, we don't have this this whole control about the system. You have multiple players. You also have multiple legislations. So there is a lot of things that have to be developed in this space, but I see also a lot of chances here. And when you look a little bit into what's happening at the moment, besides stablecoin, it's also the aspect of real world assets. So tokenizing assets that are not that liquid as like fiat currencies or cryptocurrencies. So this will, in my opinion, be the next phase here in the financial industry. And also, I think this gives a chance for traditional players like banks to play a role in this industry as custodians of those real world assets, for example.
Exactly. And again, you mentioned a bit of decentralization. That's something that we started with because, well, in this area, we could say that decentralization is a path forward both for energy and for financial market and blockchain this far also. But thank you very much for sharing your insights and giving us a glimpse into your academic work. It's really impressive. We truly believe that when universities and businesses collaborate, our impact multiplies. So it's great to hear about what you are doing and what you are applying to actual real life project. Let's revisit this conversation and let's see how our predictions about the future, well, if they became true or no. Thank you very much. And we will see what changes maybe in 6, in 12 months.
Thanks to our viewers and listeners. And remember to stay on the block to stay ahead.